But I want this to make sense. I want this to be realistic. So there were three kind of elements that I eliminated from consideration. Number one, anybody who was projected to get a 6 year or more contract. I just don't see the Twins in a space to do that. And what do I know? That's just me basing everything on kind of what we've seen on the rumor mill, and just let's face it, just past history with this club. Josh Donaldson signed a nice contract with the Twins, but they have not signed a lot of free agents to big deals. So that eliminates a few, the top guys on this list. That's going to eliminate. Maybe the most likely guy that I think they may pursue who that eliminates is Trevor Story, who MLB Trade Rumors projected at a 6 year, $126 million contract. The next point of elimination I took out was anybody who is projected to get a $20 million average annual value for multiple seasons. I could see the Twins going over that mark for a 1 year deal, but in a multi-year contract, it's hard for me to see the Twins signing anybody to a $20+ million a year contract for multiple years. So that eliminates a guy like Marcus Stroman, who they have projected to get a 5 year, $110 million contract. I love Marcus Stroman. I would sign him to that deal in a heartbeat. I don't think the Twins are going to go there. I hope they do, but I don't think they are. And then kind of going through the list, the only other guy who didn't fit into those two criteria, who I just could not see signing with the Twins for whatever reason, was Clayton Kershaw, who MLB Trade Rumors has projected getting a 1 year, $20 million deal. I think the Twins should be all over that. But I don't, some other team that Kershaw would rather play for will, like the Dodgers would offer him that, I would assume. So again, I picked the 10 guys, and it actually ended up being 8 starting pitchers. So we're going to rip through this top 10, and then I'm going to show you a comparison of these 8 starting pitchers in particular. So my number 10 spot went to Alex Wood. They have him projected to get a 3 year, $30 million deal. I don't know that he's going to get that long of a contract from anybody. He's been injured so much. This is a guy who had a great postseason in 2020 with the Dodgers, kind of reemerged in that World Series run for them, and then had a nice year with the Giants last year, getting a 10-year average annual value over 3 years. And they actually have one of the writers pick the Twins as a landing spot for him. What surprises me is how it feels like Wood's been around forever, but he's only entering his age 31 season. And I mentioned that we're ranking this based off of contract value as well. So even though Wood is higher than this guy, Danny Duffy, I actually have Duffy in my 9th spot because they have him projected for a 1 year, $10 million deal. This is another left-handed starting pitcher, Danny Duffy, entering his age 33 season. He had an injury-filled season this year, but when he pitched, this was as good as Danny Duffy's really ever looked. He was very good. The Dodgers traded for him even though he was injured, did not end up working his way back, but it sounds like he's fully healthy now entering the offseason. The guy I have at number 8 is Alex Cobb. This is the pitcher I projected the Twins were most likely to sign. That doesn't mean that he's my favorite target, so he slots in at 8th on my list. I was a little surprised that MLB Trade Rumors projected him to get a multi-year deal. I would have kind of expected it to be a 1 year deal, and maybe that kind of hurts his odds at landing with the Twins. When I wrote that article, that was kind of what I was thinking, that Cobb would be a 1 year guy. With Cobb entering his age 34 season, a guy who's been around a while, right-handed pitcher with a gross splitter. I think the Twins, he kind of fits well into what they're going to be looking for, but a 2 year, $16 million deal, $8 million average annual value. It's just kind of a knockout of the park. They need, it's not a guy who's going to be exciting, but they need to sign some starting pitchers. They only really have 2 guys penciled into the rotation right now. In my 7th spot is the guy who's actually 1 spot ahead of Cobb on MLB Trade Rumors list, and that's Corey Knebel, the only relief pitcher who made my list here. There's not a ton of relievers in the top 50 to pick from. Corey Knebel, former all-star closer for the Brewers, he's only entering his age 30 season. That feels like ages ago that he was an all-star for the Brewers. I think he saved 39 games for them. But he pitched for the Dodgers really well, kind of caught my eye, especially in the postseason where he had some really good outings. Throws hard, misses a lot. Basically the opposite of Alex Colomé, misses a lot of bats. They are projecting him to get a 2 year, $18 million contract. That's a $9 million average annual value for a reliever. That it seems, this one seems a bit out of where the Twins are willing to spend for this spot. in a relief role. For them to make that big of an investment would be pretty out of the ordinary. So that was the only relief pitcher on my top 10. Here is the only position player on my top 10. My number 6 guy is Michael Conforto. Not really a guy I thought of at all kind of coming into this exercise, which this is how it kind of works sometimes when I do these. Last year I had Marcus Semien as my number 1 target, but they did have him down for a 1-year, $14 million deal. He ended up making more than that, but based off their projections, he was the guy who had number 1, which surprised me. Conforto coming in on my list surprises me at all, but they only have him projected for a 1-year, $20 million deal. Any team in baseball should be pretty interested in that. Now, this is a left-handed corner outfield bat. It's basically the profile that the Twins need the least. But if you think about it, they do have room for another bat. And, if you're someone who thinks maybe Nelson Cruz reunion would make sense because they don't have a DH, I think this makes even more sense. You're getting a guy who can play in the field, a guy who is entering his age 29 season. And it could be a deal where you sign Conforto, and if it works out and the Twins are competing to any degree, great. If it doesn't work out, but he's having a great season, all of a sudden you have an awesome trade chip to flip at the deadline. So that's kind of where I'm coming from here. And this is a guy who has had some great seasons coming off of basically his worst season of his career. So that's where he has fallen. That's why he's potentially available at this price. And jumping up into my top 5, these next 4 starting pitchers are all very close. It basically came down to contract preference. An Anthony DeSclafani, he is the oldest of these next 4 pitchers, so that bumped him back a little bit. And then he also was a guy who had a 3-year contract projected here. As you see, a 3-year, $42 million deal. That would be a $14 million average annual value for Anthony DeSclafani. Coming off a very nice year with the Giants, but this would be a big upgrade for the Twins rotation right now at a pretty modest cost. I think this could make a lot of sense. And again, we're going to get more into these numbers in just a minute. Stick around. But number 4, I have John Gray. I mean, everybody's talking about John Gray in the Twins, analyst sphere, Twitterverse, whatever you want to say. It again, much like what I said about DeSclafani, it just makes sense. This is a guy who could really help the Twins rotation, and it's not at a ridiculous projected cost here. He's entering his age 30 season as well, so he's a bit more in his prime than DeSclafani. 4-year, $56 million. That's also a $14 million average annual value. So both him and DeSclafani the same average, but John Gray gets 1 extra year. So yeah, lots of steam with connecting his name with the Twins. I totally get it. Again, I've got him as my number 4 here. At number 3, I've got Yusei Kikuchi. I was hoping the Twins would pursue him when he came out of Japan initially. They did not. He has opted out of his contract with the Mariners and has become a free agent. His performance really almost doesn't make sense to me. You look at everything he's got, all of his pitches, all of his stuff, and you think that this guy should be putting up better numbers than he has. But that's also sort of why he's available at this very attractive 2-year, $20 million. That is a slam dunk for the Twins. With how much uncertainty there is in their rotation, get this guy at $10 million a season for 2 years. You're not really breaking the bank. You're not making a long-term investment in a guy. Again, this is a guy in his prime, essentially entering his age 31 season. And number 2, again, this was very tight, Steven Matz. And this is another one that kind of surprised me. But I felt like a lot of these pitchers in this range were very close. And he had the lowest average annual value. That's almost basically what it came down to. Matz is entering his age 31 season. He's projected here for a 3-year, $27 million deal. That is a $9 million average annual value. That is, again, the lowest of this kind of grouping that I've mentioned of this 4. Left-hander, throws a hard sinker. Yeah, and actually, also in looking deeper into him, he's had a lot more success than I kind of had realized. I'm intrigued. He is my number 2 guy based off of these contract projections that I think the Twins should be going after. And my number 1 pick, and it wasn't even that difficult, this was a slam dunk. Carlos Rodon at 1 year, $25 million. This is a guy who pitched like a Cy Young Award winner this past season. The only reason why he's available at this price is because of some injury concerns. But Rodon, another left-hander, he's entering his age 29 season. So also this is one of the younger free agents on this year's market. And all those injury concerns, I was relieved to see him throwing very hard in his postseason start. But I think he threw 99 in that start. So, If you look at his velocity as the season progressed, it is alarming how it dropped over his regular season starts. But that postseason outing gives me some relief in that, maybe there isn't so much to be concerned about. But I mean, 25 million, we're never going to make that sound like it's not a lot of money, even in baseball terms. That's a lot of money. Okay. 1 year, 25 million for Rodon. You're really only going to really hurt next year if it doesn't work out. Let's face it, the Twins need to take on some risks to give themselves a chance to be competitive next year. So this is exactly the type of thing I think the Twins should be doing. And much like with the Conforto discussion, if they're not competitive at the trade deadline, all of a sudden you have a damn good arm to dangle on the market, assuming he's healthy. Of course, that's always the thing with pitchers, but honestly, you could be buying a couple of really nice prospects with this as well. So there is potential long-term benefit from these types of deals too. All right, and on the screen here, I have those 8 starting pitchers that I mentioned in this top 10, and I mixed in Michael Pineda, who is just mainly because he's a name we know, so that gives you some context, but also Pineda's a free agent. He did not make the top 50 on MLB Trade Rumors, so that's why he wasn't in my top 10, but he's a guy outside. There's plenty of guys outside of the top 50 who I think could be contributors, could help the Twins as well. So here I've got it sorted out by ERA. The only thing I want to point out is why it was such a slam dunk for Rodon. He's by far the best ERA. Danny Duffy's only a guy who's really all that close, and he only pitched 61 innings. And then the strikeout minus walk percentage, just in a completely different stratosphere as anybody else, especially in strikeout percentage. So, and yeah, again, wins above replacement 4.9, just an absolute monster Rodon was. And if he's available on a 1-year deal, Twins got to get on that. Do you get what I'm saying by how there's this nice grouping of starting pitchers that made this top 10 that are all kind of in the same about range, and the biggest, some of the guys who are lower, like Gray and Kikuchi, I believe can get up into the same level as the DeSclafanis and Matzes and things like that. And then there's just not all that much differentiation. And again, there's upside. There's upside here. I mentioned, I think Kikuchi's maybe the highest upside guy, but with John Gray, who knows, getting him out of Colorado might help quite a bit. I don't think that's necessarily the most advanced thinking organization, or I don't know that they have the best technology. So maybe there's another gear that you can find out of that guy. There is a pathway to a good Twins team out there, a playoff Twins team. There's a pathway to take out there. They just got to find it. Thanks for checking this out. We'll talk again soon.